I was in a cafe a few months ago with one of my friends. She's the sort of person who prefers savoury over sweet. I don't really know why we're still friends. She's nice enough. She ordered a carrot cake, and I always think a carrot cake is such an abomination of a cake. It's like it's got veg in it. Fuck off. Some people choose to put dates and nuts in it. You think, you're just removing all of the cake aspects. What you've got there is a shitty pasty. So she ordered a carrot cake, I ordered a slice of strawberry cheesecake. On top of her carrot cake was some icing and then a slither of something orange-coloured for decoration, I suppose. And I said to her, is that a bit of carrot? Fair assumption of being carrot cake. And she had a little nibble of it and she went, no, it's not carrot. I said, is it orange then? She said, no, it's not orange. I said, well, I'm all out of orange-coloured things. Unless it's the tail of a goldfish, I've got no idea. She had another nibble of it and she said, I think it's apricot. I said, oh, I can't have apricot. She said, why not? I said, I'm allergic to it. She said, ooh, what happens to you? I said, ooh, I get the shits. And she said, is it really bad? I said, oh, yeah, it was like a chocolate fountain down there. And she said, was that just off one? I said, no, I had a bag of them. She said, how many was in the bag? I said, I don't know, maybe 40. And it was only as I was telling her that I realised I'm not allergic to apricots. I'm allergic to 40 apricots. Cannabis is legal in Canada. Not something I thought I would know. I'm not much of a drinker. I'm not a drug taker. I'm an eater, for fucking sure of it. I've only had one previous drug experience, and that was when I was once in Amsterdam, and I had a space cake. And I complained at the bakery because it was very dry. They'd spent no time or effort on the cake part of it at all. It was just a bun. It was even called a space cake. I wanted to say to the guys there, like, be more creative with your drug-based confectionery items. If I worked there, there'd be banoffee high. That would be nice. A crack forest gatto. Who wouldn't want that? Eton meth. Over Christmas, you could have kettle mince pies. And a spliffy toffee pudding. But I was in Canada for work. I was there with two female friends, similar age to me. We had one night off where I decided to have a night of debauchery. Now, debauchery looks different to different people. I'd like you to remember that as we work our way through the story. One of the girls said, let's get some edibles. And I was like, yeah, right, I'm starving. Turns out doesn't mean lunch. She wanted to go in this edible shop. I was nervous of this because I thought it's going to be full of cool people who've done this sort of thing before, and I'm going to like a total square because I haven't. Couldn't have been further from the truth. It was a really nice experience. Go to this shop, really helpful young man talks us through it all. He said, first of all, have any of you done this before? Two of us had, one of us hadn't. He didn't really need to ask me. I still had my blazer on. He said, if you haven't done it before, you should start with a partial one. The little jelly sweets, if you don't know. Start with a partial one, then after about 45 minutes, you know how that's affected you, and you can decide if you want to stop there or have a bit more. Good plan. So we bought some, all sorts of flavours, watermelon flavour. The thing that worried me is that I fucking love a jelly sweet. I was worried I was going to end up off my tits just because I wanted more sweets. So because of that, went straight from that shop into a supermarket, bought normal sweets for Sarah, thank you. We go back to the hotel, there's a nice restaurant there. That's where we decide to have our evening meal. Because it's a night of debauchery, I order myself half a shandy. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to you guys, but that's all I drink alcohol-wise, and I only do it 3 or maybe 4 times a year, so it hits me hard and it hits me fast. Over the course of the meal, I probably drank like 1/3 of that, so 1/3 of a half, 1/6 of shandy. And one of the girls said to me, how big is your room? We're all staying in the same hotel. I said, it's big enough to do drinking drugs in. I was already pissed. We go back to my room. Because it's my first time, I decided to have 1/3. I have 1/3 of an edible. This is where my friends started to take the piss out of me because I set an alarm on my phone for 45 minutes. We're going to have fun, but it's going to be accurate fun. And the alarm goes off and they're looking at me to see how it's affected me. I said, to be honest, I can't really tell because I still feel a bit pissed from the 6th of shandy. They have a bit more. I stop there. We chat for about another hour. Then we all go our separate ways to bed. It's about 9:30 p.m. Fuck off. We go for a nice brunch, the 3 of us, the next day. And one of the girls said to me, did you notice it kicking more like after we left you last night? I said, I don't really think so. Shall we maybe have a bit more next time? I said, yeah, maybe. And then she looked at me. She looked at my hands and she went, when did you paint your nails? I though, it might have affected me. Because after you left last night, I painted my nails and I genuinely couldn't find the ends of my fingers. That's what people say, you're supposed to know your limits. That's what they say, and I do. It's 1/3 of an edible, 1/6 of shandy, and 4 bags of Tang Fast sticks. 2 ounces of cocaine, no. See, that's where I'd fuck up. I'd use the sweet measurements and I'd apply them to drugs. I'll have 2 ounces of cocaine and 1/4 of heroin. Can you put a lorry in the heroin? Let's make this motherfucker a dib-dab. I don't think it's a fault to enjoy your food. Give it to you if you enjoy your food. I sometimes think I might have a tapeworm, but that it's just full. I went into a milkshake shop and they had on the wall like a menu of all the milkshakes that were on offer. And I picked what I thought was clearly the best one, but it had a stupid name. But I thought, well, it's the best one, I'm going to have to ask for it. And the young lad behind the counter clearly knew what was coming because he's already pissing himself. And I built up all my courage and I went, Can I have a large shake what your mama gave you? And my boyfriend, quick as a flash, just went, What, asthma? But I had a pie the other day. I had a pie every day. And as I was eating it, I realised I was enjoying the pastry more than the meat. That's quite weird, isn't it? It's like somebody giving you a birthday card and you're keeping the envelope. It does make sex a lot easier, though, because if I'm horny and on my own, I just suck a condom. Oh, that's a bit too much for some of you, isn't it? But severed cock was champion, was it? But I did a thing the January before last that I think a lot of people do, especially in January. I downloaded a diet app. Now, the phone I was using at the time was a thumb recognition phone. It didn't immediately recognise my thumb, it just kept juddering. And first of all, I thought my phone was just really clever, and it was like, it's a diet app, we've clearly been stolen. And then I looked at my thumb, and it was just covered in biscuit. So I licked the biscuit off, so I thought, maybe my last biscuit in a while, and I downloaded the diet app. What came with the diet app was a WhatsApp group of other participants. It was open to all, but my group happened to be all women, and it was so we could support each other and help each other. Everybody knows diets are hard and a bit shit. Also in the WhatsApp group was a nutritionist who was no fun at all, it transpired. One of the women in the group asked a question of the rest of us, a perfectly reasonable question, especially on day one of a new diet. She said, I'm having trouble with my sweet craving. Can anybody recommend something that isn't bad for me but will help? And one of the other women responded almost immediately. And she said, I usually find a mug of hot water with 1 small drop of lemon works for me. And I just thought, I'm not going to make it to the end of the week. My suggestion was going to be half a Twix. And the nutritionist, she was called Poppy. Of course she fucking was. She said, can I just chip in? And I misread it, and I was like, chips, hooray, nom nom nom. She said, just brush your teeth, that fixes everything. And I thought, that's so unhelpful. The only thing that would help is hunger, if I could eat me fucking toothbrush, because I'm so hungry right now. You daft cow. Cows. There were some recipes that came with the diet. I tried one of them. It was how to make banana pancakes out of almost no ingredients. First time I tried them, just looked like vomit in a pan. Second time, managed to make them look a lot more like pancakes. And I was so excited and a little bit lightheaded from all of the hunger that when I ran from the kitchen to show my husband, I tripped and the plate smashed on the floor. But because it was a really low point in the diet for me, let's call it day 2, I ate them off the floor. Then I had to check to see if the fragments of plate and cat hair I'd also ingested counted as my sins for the week. One of the women in the group got told off as an adult, got told off for eating goji berries. If you've never had goji berries, it's like chewing elastic bands. She got told off because goji berries are full of natural sugar, not really allowed on this plan. She wasn't having Coke or Pops with cider poured on. She was having goji berries on her bran flakes, some sad sprinkled on some more fucking sad. I got told off for calling it a diet. What I actually said was, I fucking hate this diet. We don't like to call it a diet. We prefer to call it a way of life. She said, I fucking hate this way of life. She was right, though, because it was also my way of life from the 3rd to the 5th of January. I started to ask questions. You got a nutritionist at your fingertips, why don't you try and learn something? I said, I've got some questions for you, Poppy, is that okay? She said, fire away, anything you like. I said, I've had a cherry. Now, I thought it was okay because it's fruit, but now I'm not so sure. It was on top of a Bakewell, is that okay? I've had an apple. An apple's full of natural sugar as well. It was surrounded by something called, what was it called? Crumble, is that all right? I've had a banana. A banana's allowed. I mean, I ate it out of a stripper's crotch. Is that all right? She said that was fine. The next day, it was covered in cream. I think it was cream. I couldn't be sure. It was dark. But the final straw for me, my last day on the diet, or day 3, was when Poppy came on the WhatsApp group and she said, hey, girls. Which always pissed me off, because all women in their 40s and 50s, fuck off with your girls. Hey, girls, can I just check if you all definitely challenged yourselves this week? And I was the first to respond. I said, I've challenged myself, Poppy. She said, oh, good, please share it with the group. I said, gladly. I said, I challenged myself. I said, I walked into Asda. I went to the whoops section. I found 2 Belgian buns that had to be eaten by midnight, and I fucking did it! But I've got a friend who's really good at cooking and baking, and I was on the phone to her, she was showing off a little bit. She knows some random food facts, and she said, did you know that sugar is a preservative? I said, ooh, I'll live forever then. She said, no, you'll probably die quite young, but you won't go off for ages. But she said to me, if you want to learn to cook, why don't I just come and stay for the weekend and I'll teach you some basics? And I thought, actually, it's a really good idea. She said, do you mind if before I come, if I email you a list of things I think you should have in your store cupboard? I've never called it my store cupboard in my life. It's always been the bean cupboard, because that's where I keep me tins of beans. But I was a good girl. I got everything in that she suggested. I ordered it online. I'd never ordered food online for delivery before. If you've never done it, give it a go. It's amazing. I typed it into a computer, and a man brought it to the house. Some of you are looking at me like, fuck off, it's real. Typed it into a computer. Somehow a fella got the message who had a van and some food. And he brought it. You're not taking it seriously. A man brought food to my house. It was like being in a restaurant, but I didn't have to have a bra on. Bit like Nando's then. Only a few weeks ago, my fella said to me, he said, your day-to-day is busier than mine. He said, do you want me to go and do a quick food shop? And I said, oh, that would be amazing, thanks very much. I said, I'm only here for a couple of days, so don't get loads in. He said, just give us a list. I said, great. So I made him a list, off he went. When he came back in, he said, I managed to get everything off the list apart from one thing. I said, that's great, thanks very much. I started to unpack the bags, put them in the cupboard. And I said, what was the thing you didn't manage to get? He said, I didn't manage to get you any avocados. I said, oh, that's all right, don't worry about that. He said, so I bought you some pork pies instead. I said, I wish you worked for Tesco Home Delivery. We've run out of celery, so we've given you a Swiss roll. But he said the best thing about them, he said, they're whoops pork pies. I said, I don't know what that means. He said, they're whoops pork pies. He said, they're going to run out. We'll have to eat all 6 of them before we go to bed. Yes! But you know those cookie shops on the high street where you can get the normal sized cookies, but you can also get the bigger sort of celebration ones? He bought me one of those, celebration one, a few years ago for part of my Christmas present, and it was smashing. I was unexpected, it was great. And I opened the box and I said, this is a great present, this is excellent. He said, oh, I'm glad you like it. It was all iced Merry Christmas, Sarah, with kisses on. He said, I'm glad you like it. He said, there's only one drawback. And I'm looking at a cookie that's bigger than me head, thinking, there's no fucking drawback. He said, there's only one drawback, it only lasts 5 days. I said, it's like you don't know me at all. He said, you didn't let me finish, it only lasts 5 days, and I bought it 4 days ago. He said, stop your fucking chatting and get the kettle on then. That's not a present, love. That's a challenge.